it should be the same one. So you've got two different scenarios there, okay? And you pick one of the two. Two different scenarios. You just pick one of them, all right? And you are going to look, you've got your 4 questions there, kind of that are right in the middle of that, right in the middle of that page here, right? So you're going to look at the scenarios, and then you're going to answer these 4 questions. So what factors, those steps in the perception process and influences on perception are influencing your perception of the other person in the scenario, either your colleague or your client. And then you need to also identify which factors influence their perception of you, right? And that one's kind of a guess, right? Like you're kind of guessing what might be their influences. Maybe it's age, etc. Okay? So this is all in all in chapter 3 of your textbook. Okay, so if you wanted to go to chapter 3.
In chapter 3, okay.
Now, do you explain why for each of them, or explain why for all of them all together?
Well, you need to write what factors influence your perception, right?
Right.
And explain why.
Yeah.
And then what factors could be influencing their perception of you and why.
Okay.
If you don't explain why, I can't give you points for that,
well,
right?
Obviously, but I was meaning for each. Okay, say, for example,
yes,
okay.
you would want for each.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. What common tendencies of perception may be occurring in this situation? And key thing on the part of both participants, both you and the other person. Okay, and explain why. So where you want to start is I would go into your textbook and write out what are these steps in the perception process, what are the influences on perception, okay? What are the common tendencies in perception? Like, so you understand what that looks like. What communication techniques that you could use, okay? To check that your interpretation of the situation is correct. And you need to do a perception check. You have to do a perception check. So if you look at, and I'm going to bring this back up again, how I am marking you, right? So you have access to this. This is not just me telling you this and you have to write it down. You have access to this. So when you go into your assignment on Brightspace under Dropbox and click on the evaluation and feedback, this is how I'm marking you. The format, structure, and writing style of your essay, you're going to get a mark out of 4. Okay? So meaning like if you hover your mouse, you can see how there's a description of what that looks like, right? So if this is what you would get, that'd be a 4. That means logical organization and clear 3-part structure, which is kind of like your heading, your body of your paper, and like a conclusion. Okay? Effective headings are used. Spelling and grammar is correct. We're all using computers. All the computers have spell check. Make sure your spell check is enabled. Okay? There should be no obvious spelling errors. Okay, look at that, what is underlined in red, and it'll tell you if something's if something is spelled wrong. Okay, the second one is your discussion of perception factors. Did you discuss 3 or more relevant concepts from the textbook identified, justified, that's your why, right, where it says explain why, and it deals with both parties, okay? And you need to tell me like where you're getting this information from in the textbook. If you don't cite it, if you don't like reference it, I don't know where you get your information from, right? So then you can go, like this would be good. So this would be a 3 out of 4 for this section. Maybe you only identified 2 relevant concepts. If you only identified 1, you're going to get a 2 out of 4. If it's insufficient, you didn't identify any concepts, so I would have no choice but to give you a 1 there if justification is vague or lacking. Okay. Common tendencies and perception. Flag that in your textbook. are 3 or more relevant concepts from the textbook identified, justified, and correctly cited, and it deals with both parties, you and the other person, right? This one would be 2 relevant concepts, 1 relevant concept, etc. Okay? The perception checking process. Did you do a correct and complete perception check, which includes the behavior, 2 interpretations, and a clarifying question? Write out exactly what you're going to say to the other person. If you write out exactly what you say and you have all of those components in there, I give you a 4. Right? There's no guessing. There's no guesswork really of what I'm asking for because it is clearly laid out right here. Okay? And then discussions of effective communication techniques. If you used 3 or more relevant concepts, you get a 4. 2 relevant concepts, 1 relevant concept, or insufficient evidence. Okay? So to make it probably the easiest, I would start, and again, this is how I think if I were writing this essay, how I would get started is I would make myself notes about all of these things, right? What are the perception factors? If I want 3, I better write down on a scrap piece of paper at least what 3 are that you would feel would work for you with your case scenario that you chose, okay? I would write down common tendencies in perception. I would write down at least 3 common tendencies of perception that would relate to the scenario that you chose. See, do you see here on the screen, Kelly, where it says, like, I've got the little pointer fingers there. It says excellent, very good, out of 4. 3 or more relevant concepts from textbook are identified, justified, and correctly cited. Do you see where I'm pointing? I mean, you can't see my finger pointing, but do you see where the little hand cursor is on the screen there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I just have it hovered over this little square under the rubric. If I moved it over to the good, satisfactory, that would be a 3 out of 4, and that would be 2 relevant concepts. Okay, so I mean, ultimately, I think you should all aim for 4 out of 4 for each of these sections. So write down, as looking for 3 or more relevant concepts that are just, your common tendencies of perception. So make yourself notes and write out what 3 or 4 common tendencies are and how they relate to your scenario. And your perception check, write out what a perception check is, what it all entails, and, then when you are reading your scenario, you can start kind of putting in information, things that you've written out on your piece of paper, right, and how it relates to your scenario. And then you're just going to write it all into an essay, right? I would start with something like what perception is and what that means, and, things like that, and then go from there.
The back page it also says logical structure. We have to have introduction.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
So that, like, your introduction is kind of like what you plan to talk about in your essay. So if you were to Google, let me just...
Research paper outline.
Yes,
I've had to do it.
Yeah, research paper outline, for sure. Basic essay format, like there's lots of different, don't worry too much about like the whole APA format stuff. Actually I spelled that wrong. Let's see what any of this. So your outline is essentially like your 3 parts are your introduction, okay? The middle is the body, which is where you put the, all of the information that is required of you for that essay. And then your ending is your summary. So like in summary, I'm going to put in 1 or 2 short paragraphs what we concluded out of your entire essay. Okay? So that's really it. Here's your introduction. This is Grammarly.com blog essay outline. The first section of your essay is the introduction. It is where you introduce the topics you're going to be covering in your essay. It's also where you don't really need to state your thesis because we're not doing that, but should be concise and hook the reader. So it's where you're just going to say, perception is blah, 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 and we're going to discuss perception in a workplace scenario or something like that. Now, if you use those exact words, I'll know that you just copied me, but then your body, right? This is your full information. Now, when we say 3 pages, that's an estimate. If you go, and do 3 full ones and on your 4th, you're not getting duck marks. If you have all of the concepts in 2 pages, I'm not counting pages. We just use pages as a general guideline. If you have this all in 1 page, there's no way that you have gotten a 4 out of 4 on all of those components that I just went through. There's just not enough space on 1 page unless you use like a size 3 font and it's so small, right? So use the size 12 font. If you are correctly, doing all of those components that are in that rubric that I just went over, it'll take you roughly 3 pages.
Double
And does it
space.
have to be-
Yeah,
does it
double
have to be
spaced.
double
Sorry.
spaces?
Yeah, I'm not counting. If it's double spaced or spaced in half, I really don't care. What I don't want to see is, don't make it like triple spaced just because you don't think you have 3 pages. If you have
Right.
2 pages and you think you've met all those components, hand in a 2-page essay. You get 0 marks on how many pages it is. Okay? Please don't get hung up on this 3-page thing. That is not where you want to spend your time worrying about how many pages it is. Worry about meeting the components within this rubric. Okay?
And
That's
I can
how I
get
work.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have access to this. When you click on that case study, you're gonna see all
That's
the
what I
things that
don't, I
compare.
can't see this part, yeah.
Hang on, let me go and I can show you what it looks like from a student's perspective.
How did you do that?
Yeah, so when you go to assessment,
Okay, assessment, how do you do that?
yeah, assessment, then Dropbox,
Okay. Dropbox, yeah.
yeah, then you click on the case study,
Click
where it says assignment 1: case
case
study,
study,
yeah,
okay.
and then this comes up. You
Oh,
can actually just print this.
can you? Okay.
Yeah, there's a little
That's
spot
what
that
I
says
need to
print
see
rubric.
that, yeah.
And you get it, every section's out of 4. And then
That would be more helpful.
yeah, that's everything that I just kind of went over, but yeah. I will tell you that the only way you get a 0 is if you don't hand it in.
Yeah.
If you hand in anything, and even if you're totally kind of off the mark, at very minimum, you're getting a 5 out of 20, which yes is a fail, but I will tell you that still is way better than a 0 out of 20. Chances of you would literally have to just talk about space in order to get nothing if you hand in an assignment. If you put in some effort, I'm usually pretty generous. Let's see. If anybody's ever failed this assignment, I would say 80% of the people who fail this assignment don't hand it in. The other 20 just literally put 0 effort into it. I don't even think they opened the assignment and tried.
Yeah, this is a totally different assignment I dealt with.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, print this off or, write it out or whatever you need to do. You could probably, if you don't have a printer, I bet you could copy and paste this into a Word document.
Yeah, I like to do that, so it gives me more of an understanding what I need to put on a paper.
It's all there for you.
Click on study case, okay, and then it should show up, okay.
And then the assignment itself, when you click on the attachment, this is what shows up, right? So it's got,
Yeah, I've got that one, I managed to print it out.
and it just tells you here, this is how you are going to write it, right? And it says here, your introduction, body, conclusion.
Okay,
And you could put a heading, you could put a title that says, per section, your influences of perception. You can put that as a heading and then discuss what the hell that is. If you do it in bullet points and not full sentences, I can't give you a 4 out of 4 for the format, for the logical structure part of it. So you just can't do bullet points for the whole thing. You can, you just will never get a full 4 out of 4 if you do bullet points. But I do want it in an essay format, which is your full sentences, kind of a flowing of thing. Okay.
And this is all based out of chapter 3 in the
Primarily, yes. Now, I mean, all of your perception stuff that it talks about in the assignment is all out of chapter 3. The last question where it talks about communication techniques and specific ways to ensure you communicate effectively. I've already talked about you have to have a perception check, but you can use the entire textbook for different communication techniques. So if you want to talk about active listening and responding styles, you can talk about that, right? And we're going to get into some more communication techniques here, like in chapters 9 and 10. So, you know, if you wanted, like, what I would say is you're not going to just write it all out right now. I mean, do class today and Monday, and you might add to things in terms of like your communication techniques.
Okay, I feel a little bit better now that I saw that. And I can print it out. Okay, gives me an idea how to do it.
Right.
I'll click on that.
I'm really just more concerned about making sure that you understand the concepts of perception and perception checking, and just recognizing that people have different perceptions based on things like age and experiences, etc. I really care more, like that's really why we have assignments, is so that I can understand how much you understand. So that's really what I'm looking at.
Right.
I'm not looking for the most beautiful of essays. Right? Like that's not what's important. I know people who are really good at writing essays and do all the formatting right, but what's in the essay is crap. And that's like, well, why would I give points just because somebody can format an essay properly when they don't know the information? I'm more worried about you knowing the information.
Yeah. Well, I'm just learning how to use the computer because I haven't used a computer for so long. So
Absolutely.
this laptop, I'm just trying to learn how to write out an essay on a laptop. So it's a whole new experience for me right now. So
For sure. And like I said, I'm not, other than like spelling, grammar, and all of that, that is important, but like what it actually looks like, you know, if the margins aren't lined up, I'm not going to document for that. That's not, to me, what's important when it comes to an essay like this. So, yeah. Really, what's really important, and it's not formatting. Now, if anybody was here wanting to do, like the RN or the LPN program, you do a lot more essays. They really do focus a lot on formatting and the proper APA format, but for the sake of this program, that's not my focus. Okay. Let's just take lunch now, and then we'll start chapter 9 when we come back from lunch, all right?
Oh, okay.
Because it's almost 11:30 anyway.